Hello, Ben Friedman here from the Beniverse, and today on this channel, what we are going to be talking about is the Best Picture race. Now, this has been seemingly is going to be a runaway. I am recording this Saturday, March 11th at 7:12 p.m. PST, and I was hesitant of whether I should do this video because by all accounts, Everything Everywhere All at Once has won all the precursors. If you had to bet, if you had to believe in whatever you're going to believe in who is going to win Best Picture, your best bet is taking Everything Everywhere All at Once to win. However, I don't know if that's true, and we're going to talk about that today. We're going to talk a little bit about all of that. By the way, if you are interested in betting, I just wanted to let you know I just posted a video breaking down the Oscars Vegas odds. So if you're at all interested on that, make sure to check out my channel here on YouTube. So with that all said, let's get into the Best Picture race. And what I'm going to do today is I'm going to give not necessarily my reviews, because for all these films, I've reviewed them on this channel already. You can find all those past reviews in my playlist. I have one called Oscars 2023. You'll be able to find most, if not all, of my reviews for the Oscar films. But so today what I am talking about is the preferential ballot and how I would fill out that ballot if I had a vote in the Academy Awards. So for those who do not know how the preferential ballot works, it is simply everybody votes in Best Picture. Everyone in the Academy votes for Best Picture, and you rank the nominees from 10 to 1. Whatever one ends up having the highest rank amongst the body will end up. So for instance, if a film averages, let's say, I don't know how the averages exactly work. I'm going to say it's out of 1 to 10. So let's say one averages 8.7 versus one averaging 4.5. Or a better example would be more people have one film at 1 and 2 and 3, but there's a divisive film that a lot of people have at 1 and 10, which ends up making it around a 5. Even though the other one might have been hovering around more, if people had it as their second or third favorite, the divisiveness of the other film will hurt that film's chances. So we're going to be talking about that today when doing my preferential ballot. But when I was voting, and I took this very seriously, somewhat too serious for someone who doesn't actually have a vote, I was thinking about how I would vote for it and what I find important in the Oscars race. Let's get it out of the way. The Oscars are essentially a dumb award. If you actually look back at the history of the Oscars, they've arguably got it wrong more times than they've gotten it right. If you look at the history of those films, not a lot of those films actually end up being remembered, whether it's an acting performance, a directing performance, whether it's the Best Picture. A lot of these you look back and revisionist history kind of takes its faults. It's the situation that allows Citizen Kane to go home empty-handed of the Best Picture and instead, how green is my valley to win? These are the things we're talking about. It's the fact that Al Pacino wins his first Oscar for Scent of the Woman, despite being nominated for Godfather and Godfather Part 2. It's the fact that Jessica Chastain, our presenter this year, will be presenting Best Actor, or it should be said, presume, because she won Best Actress last year for The Eyes of Tammy Faye, despite being ignored for other. It's probably in a few years the reason Amy Adams will win an Oscar for playing somebody real who's an alcoholic, whatever. That's what we're talking about when we're talking about the revisionist history of the Oscars, where you look back and you're like, was that actually that actor or actress or director or that picture's best work? Is this Leonardo DiCaprio's best work in The Revenant, or is it just so happened to be the year that the Academy finally gave it to him? So in thinking of all that and factoring things into my ballot, I wanted to consider that. I wanted to consider a few things in particular. There were 5 things that I was thinking about. First one was longevity. Will we be talking about this film in 10 years, in 20 years, in 30 years, in 50 years? Will this become a part of film history, essentially, and still be remembered in the lexicon of film? Take a film like Casablanca, which 80 years later is still highly remembered and highly touted, versus How Green Is My Valley, which is remembered for the film that beat Citizen Kane, the much more beloved film. Number 2 is, and again, it's tying back to this historical aspect of it, is the historical context within film canon itself. How does this change the medium of film? How does this discuss the existence of film, where it's come to this point and where it is going? Does this revolutionize anything? how will filmmakers remember this film winning? The third one I have is very similar, but this one is Hollywood moving forward. And how I describe this is, will this film change the film industry moving forward? Basically, will this film have some form of an impact that will be felt in generations of filmmaking going forward? Citizen Kane's a classic example of that, but you've seen it in other cases. Look at the Oscar post-Titanic, how much of those big epics came out, like Pearl Harbor. Look at Lord of the Rings, The Return of the King, and how a generation of filmmakers were inspired to make their versions of Lord of the Rings. Now, true, not quite as good. That's what I'm talking about when I'm talking about, will it change the film industry moving forward? Will we get more of these types of stories, or is this largely going to be a film like The Artist that kind of goes forgotten? And then 4 is filmmaking achievement, and that is simple. When watching the film, can you see an achievement in the filmmaking, something special, something unique in that? That is very subjective, or I guess it should say that is very objective. And then finally, the last one, which is probably the most important of these 5, is truly the quality of the film. Is the film good? Usually, when you're putting a preferential ballot, you'd like your number 1 and your number 2 to be good. And you'd assume your number 10 is your least favorite of the 10. That doesn't always seem to shake out based on some of these honest ballots that come out during the end of Oscar voting week. But that's generally how I like to believe that the Academy works, and it's how I will be working. I'm going to be working with that transparency that I want to honor good films. And there are going to be, and I should just warn, there are going to be films on here that maybe I don't like it as much as other films on this list, but ultimately I am more happy supporting this film for what it means in the history of film, what it means for the film industry moving forward, for the achievement of it, the longevity of the film, and ultimately I think the qualities are close enough that it can kind of be a wash. So coming in at number 10 for me, for my preferential ballot, would be Triangle of Sadness, which the reason it's so low here is because out of the 10 nominees, this is the only one that I think is a definitively bad movie. I think this story is a mess. I think the messaging of this movie is very messy, to say the least. It just doesn't work for me. It's far too long. I don't think it's as clever as it ever thinks it is. I think the campaign has been really annoying. The campaign of rich people, this movie is about you. To me, that just kind of rubbed me the wrong way when you know that there's a big studio like Neon supporting that, and they're all rich people as well. I just think this whole film kind of got lost up its own ass, and that's why it's number 10 for me. I just do not care for this film in any real particular way. There are some good aspects in it, but also the Academy did not nominate the best aspects of this movie, which is Dolly DeLillion. So just nothing about this film and how the Academy loved it worked for me. I think there were far better scripts. And the issue is, in a year where we've had stuff like The White Lotus, like we've had The Menu and Glass Onion, this Eat the Rich type film has been done better this year. And that's why it is ultimately number 10. It's my least favorite of the 10 nominated, and I would not call it a good film. Coming in at number 9 is All Quiet on the Western Front. Now, here's where I want to differentiate it. I do consider All Quiet on the Western Front a good film. I think it is an exceptionally well-made war movie. The issue is I've seen war movies before, and if you look at it, this is a remake of a film that already won Best Picture in the 1930s. So there was just nothing that was able to get me to put it any higher on this list, where I just saw the artistic achievements of other films to be higher above it. The filmmaking, while impressive, I wouldn't say it's anything revolutionary or even anything different than what I've seen in films like Saving Private Ryan or 1917. I think it is a good war movie. I think fans of war movies will genuinely like this movie a lot, but ultimately it's just not enough to get me to vote for this in any high way for Best Picture, and it's going to be low on my ballot for that reason. Coming in at number 8 is a film that I do genuinely really like. And I want to, again, this is that idea where it's just like, I have it higher in maybe my own rankings or above some of the other films that I have above it, but it's so close and there are reasons I have it. And coming in at number 8 for that reason is Elvis, which is a film that I think is style over substance. But when that style is Baz Luhrmann's style, I think that is able to overcome it. there is going to be redundancy of this film winning multiple awards. Austin Butler could easily win tomorrow. And when we remember this film, we are going to remember the Baz Luhrmann effect, the Austin Butler, the voice and all that. I don't think we're actually going to be talking about the movie because the movie is inherently really flawed. It is way too long, as a lot of these films this year are. It has been one of my biggest complaints in Hollywood recently. It lacks editing. It's all over the place. Tom Hanks is doing something very weird in this film, and yet I was swept away by this film, and I found it to be quite an impressive achievement, if not a thoroughly perfect achievement. But so anyway, I wouldn't begrudge this film for winning. I think there is a lot of good in it, and I think if it won, we would remember it as, look at what Austin Butler, the superstar that he could very well become. And if he becomes the biggest star in 10 years come, we will go back in this and look, this is his ascension to the throne. With that also said, Baz Luhrmann's success, we will see and have seen Baz Luhrmann's filmmaking tried to be copied in other films, this bombastic style that he brings into it. With that also said, if Elvis wins, we will see one thing and one thing repeating itself, and it will always continue to get musical biopics films. This will be the typical formula. Now, the one good thing that the Academy could hang its head on, it could hang its hat on if it won Best Picture, is that this was a film that was well seen. And the Academy would like to have a film that people saw and liked. And Elvis winning it would have a good fan base behind it that would get some people very excited for that. So that's why it is ultimately coming in at number 8. Number 7, and I'm going to go by this one fairly quick, is Avatar: The Way of Water, which obviously is incredibly groundbreaking in its special effects. I wouldn't call it one of James Cameron's best films, though, and you could argue that this is either the same or maybe slightly above or lower quality than the first Avatar film. And I think what ultimately has hurt this film, despite it being one of the biggest films of all time, it has already grossed, it is the highest grosser of 2022. It's the issue of there's another film that has quite a lot of box office and fan support that is ultimately probably going to be remembered more fondly, has people more excited about the industry. And honestly, I think for all of that, that's what's hurting the case of Avatar: The Way of Water, is the existence of Top Gun Maverick. I think the existence of Maverick weakens Avatar's The Way of Water's chances at actually winning and competing. That's why it's number 7 for me. Number 6 is a film that, again, I would have slightly lower on my personal rankings. So if I was truly favorite would rewatch, I'd probably have this maybe more 7 or 8. It's Women Talking, Sarah Polley's film that she wrote and directed. And like I said, I'd personally have it maybe a spot or two lower. But when thinking about it within the historical context, within film canon, what it means as a filmmaking achievement, I think the filmmaking achievement is in its writing, which it will probably be rewarded for. I think we're going to be longevity of it is we're going to be talking about the dialogue of this film and what it means in our world, specifically in American world, especially post Roe v. Wade being overturned and, the Me Too movement and accountability culture and just some of the muddled stuff that has come up with Hollywood's past. And this feels like a film that is literally modern enough to address those topics, but yet feel detached enough to engage in it in a thoroughly interesting way. Now, like I said, there were issues with this film. I think the lighting in this film is horrible. I don't know why it was chose to look so grayed out. It was definitely a stylistic choice. It did not work for me, but the writing and the performances definitely did work for me. Coming in at number 5 is a film that will be remembered, but more for its uniqueness and its performances. I don't see this film having widespread appeal outside of true film buffs, fans of Colin Farrell, Brendan Gleeson, Martin McDonagh. Banshees of Inisherin is my number 5. It has a lot going for it. The Academy loves Martin McDonagh. This is such a complicatedly weird film that I just don't see having a huge audience outside of the people who really appreciate this type of film. This is one of those tests that if I ran it and I said, will the average movie viewer be able to get through Banshees of Inisherin. If I showed it to my mom, I just don't see her having any interest in this or understanding it or wanting to engage with it in any meaningful way. And when we're talking about longevity of a film, you have to have a common audience who is able to watch this movie and find enjoyment and find acclaim and joy in it, or be able to recognize the filmmaking achievement, because ultimately we can talk about it. Me as a film critic, me and my film critic friends, me writing papers, me talking about people like you who are interested in it, we can talk about it, but in reality, it's not going to be well remembered. It wasn't a particular box office success. I just don't see it being anything that will, I think it's going to kind of have the, probably more of an In Bruges type living, where In Bruges is very well remembered. It's very remembered very fondly. I think this will maybe be a step below. I think this film is so dark by the end that I think it loses a lot of its audience, where In Bruges keeps a level of comedy and fun to it. But this is certainly maybe McDonagh's best work, and fans of McDonagh and Colin Farrell will go back to it. It's just those aren't the hugest names. They're not the Tom Cruises of this world. That's why I have it at number 5. Coming in at number 4, this is a film that honestly, of the 10, has a good chance to be revered within 25 years. This could be one of those films that you see on the Sight and Sound list in like 50 years. It's one of those films that we're going to look back and we are going to think one of the best actors of our generation gave one of the best performances, if not the best performance of their life, and it could very well go unrecognized. It's going to be a film that was liked, but probably not realized for the greatness that it is. It's going to have people talking about it forever due to the performance of Cate Blanchett. That is Tar, directed by Todd Field. Now, this is a film that obviously really exists within the historical context of which Hollywood exists in, specifically with cancel culture, accountability, as I'd like to call it. These ideas are going to be very prevalent. We are literally seeing a conductor days as before she unravels. There's this madness to the film. There's this racism, this underbelly to the character of Lydia Tarr. And the ending is so shocking. I mean, you've never seen an ending quite like this. You would not be able to predict what happens at the end of Tar unless you've seen Tar. It's just such a wild ride. Todd Field has it so masterfully locked down as a director and a writer. I totally understand the choices he made. Now, personally, for me, the film was possibly a little too long. I need to rewatch it because the film does sit with you in a really uncomfortable way. When I initially reviewed this film, I think I gave it 2.5, actually maybe 3 stars out of 5. There is an easy argument that I've given it much higher. The more I've thought about this, is probably of the 10, it's the one that, while I've seen arguably the least amount of all these, I've thought about it up there with some of my favorite films of the year. There is so much brilliance in this film, especially in the Cate Blanchett performance, that I could see this film, like I said, just in 25 years, just being the thing, the artifact of 2022 that we all look back at. And we're like, that was a masterpiece gone unrecognized in its time. Coming in at number 3, I have, and I've battled with these top 3. I love all these top 3 for different reasons. But ultimately coming in at number 3, despite it being my second favorite film of the year, was The Fabelmans. And here's what it is. I think when people heard the premise of The Fabelmans, they thought it was going to be this small cheese, self-congratulatory film about Steven Spielberg as a filmmaker. Look how great he is. That's not what this film is. It's very sensitive. It deals with very tough subject matters such as racism, divorce, just a life explored and the trauma that comes with it and what it means to make art and be an artist. Essentially, it is the lexicon of Spielberg encompassed within The Fabelmans, and it's probably going to be regarded, Spielberg is 75, 76. He doesn't have a lot of these films left in him. And this is going to be one of the films that, when we look back, it is literally kind of a self-biographical film where it explains the most important filmmaker of our lifetime. And for all of that, this film could have been one thing, and I don't think it ever becomes that thing. I think it is far more sad. I think it is far more disturbing in some sequences, where it is just, we're seeing a person turn to art because they don't know how to express themselves. There's one scene in particular involving Sammy Fableman, where he's looking on as his parents basically the realization that they're going to get divorced. And he sees it through the camera. And that's such a powerful shot. And it speaks to so many artists, people who've felt that, people who see the world through film and have to kind of express themselves through the medium that they understand. There's something so incredibly personal about this film, so shocking in its just depiction. The mother character is such an interesting architect of a character to reinvent in this film. Paul Dano is playing against type perfectly. I could go on and on about this film. Like I said, I love it. It might even argue to be my favorite film of this year. Ultimately, I think these two other films have more of an argument to maybe not the longevity, because I think all three of these films will be remembered for a long time. And I think the historical context within film canon, with Spielberg being Spielberg, I think will exist there. I don't know how this film will change the film industry moving forward. That's where I kind of ding at some points, I guess, if you will, because it's just like, you know, we've been in this trend right now where filmmakers are returning to their childhood. Sean Fennessy of The Big Picture has suggested maybe that's because of COVID, the realization of mortality as it ever approaches us. With that all said, though, like I said, The Fabelmans, I think, is personally brilliant. I just do understand that maybe this isn't the best for filmmaking as a whole if this wins, where I don't know if as many people will get excited, unlike if one of these other two films wins. So coming in at number 2 is Everything, Everywhere, All at Once. There is so much positive that would happen if this film wins. One, it would just encourage young directors to take greater risk in filmmaking. It can really change the way we just perceive a prestige drama, a prestige Oscar film. It further glorifies the success of Asian Americans within film history. It really kind of helps canonize their place in modern Hollywood. Michelle Yeoh being an icon, Kiwi Kwan's story. One of the also most important things to talk about it is the dominance that will continue if it wins. A24 will have another Best Picture win after Moonlight, one that is universally loved and acclaimed and means so much to a certain group of people, one that is a champion of diversity, a family of just love and good feelings and good vibes. This is also, unlike Moonlight, this was a huge financial success. This is probably the 4th most successful Best Picture film nominated. This film, Everything Everywhere All at Once, grossed over $100 million. That's a lot of money. It's A24's biggest successful film at this point. It's been sweeping the award ceremonies. And also, if we're looking at kind of the historians of film culture, which ends up being the film critics, film criticism is largely heading towards the internet film culture. You could even argue that film criticism is completely held online in journalism, and people who write for magazines like myself really don't have any relevancy anymore, and that my YouTube channel is more important than the writings I do, which is a sad thing to think about and really hard for me to think about, and I'm trying not to cry while saying that, but when talking about that, like, that is where the discussion is being held, and this film works very well within the internet. It exists within meme culture. It exists within the arts of Kung Fu. It exists as all these things, this talking point of growing diversity. It's directed by literally guys who directed the Get Down for whatever that music video from a few years ago was called. These are true comedians. These are true risk takers in Hollywood, with such a beautiful message, with such a beautiful film, with a film that is so eagerly ambitious and so unafraid to march to its own tune, that I think this will inspire a generation of knockoff films, which I'm not necessarily sure I'm excited to see, but there is going to be something really exciting when directors, filmmakers, writers, actors realize they can take something bold and take these crazy turns in their career and make art from it, and that they won't be afraid to just be kind of mocked at, or just like, success can come from anything now, if Everything Everywhere All at Once. Nothing is too crazy because this film is literally bonkers. It's so ambitious in its storytelling. And that would be incredible for the film industry. That will legitimately could help modernize film as we know it. I mean, it could truly get a younger generation, someone who is younger than me. I'm 25. This could get that preteen, teenager generation. Like, right now, there is a 14-year-old, a 13-year-old teenager who saw this film, and they're going to be the next generation of filmmakers. They love this film. This is going to inspire whoever the next generation of filmmakers are. This is that type of film that has that type of power, that has that type of cast. I cannot degrade the film for that. Even if I like some of the other films on this list more, like I do prefer The Fabelmans. I think The Fabelmans to me is a better film. I can't deny Everything Everywhere All at Once context within the film canon and what this will mean for Hollywood moving forward, plus the fact that it is a legitimately great film and impressive filmmaking achievement. With that said, the only film that I think can compete with this, and it's my personal number one here, and maybe this was the bias, but I think Spielberg made a great point when he said Top Gun Maverick saved cinema. Top Gun Maverick is my number one, and this may be the film that we look back as a turning point in Hollywood history. This may have been the film that saves the theatrical experience, gives studios an inclination of how to make a film a huge success without relying on the IP-ness of a Marvel superhero 10th installment with a franchise. How to make superstars again, how to make movie stars, how to utilize actors like Miles Teller and Glenn Powell to be the next generation of stars within Hollywood, make a box office sensation. It's also going to be the perfect capstone for the careers of somebody like Jerry Bruckheimer, someone like Tom Cruise of it all. And it's a film that everyone saw and loved. This film went with great reviews. And this could become the question of, is this the last hurrah within Hollywood? Or is this the death of Hollywood, in the sense that, like, this, it's either going to be the hurrah and Hollywood is saved, or this could be the last hurrah and Hollywood dies. It's just like, this is its last breath, and this is the last film we go out in a blaze of glory. Or it could be the savior of Hollywood. Ultimately, what this film is, it is a huge crowd-pleasing epic like Titanic. It has a lot of people who are invested and love this film. It works with the nostalgia very well. It is a very 2022 film. And the fact that it definitely has some of the superhero qualities, the things that you see from those films are in there. It really plays on the nostalgia elements of it. And yet it's completely able to stand alone. And it gave us stars. It gave us a star power. It brought and revigorized the film industry post-COVID. This was a sign that Hollywood can still make these types of movies, and it can still get everybody. One of the big things we should talk about is the political divide within America right now. And what Top Gun Maverick does is it works amongst anybody. It doesn't really have a political agenda. Anyone can enjoy this film. No one's going to be offended while watching this film, I would assume. Obviously, there's going to be some stupid Republican out there who's just like, a woman is in this film, how dare they? But regardless of that, like, largely this film is going to be beloved by its audience, and its audience is universal. If Hollywood can capitalize on the success, if they can learn the lessons of Top Gun Maverick, let's look at it. It has the longevity case. People will be talking about Top Gun Maverick in 10 years, in 20 years, in 30 years, as they do Tom Cruise films. It is certainly of a quality. It can be and have a historical context within film canon. It will influence how the film industry moves forward. It's just the question is, will it succeed or fail? Will the Top Gun Maverick effect be good for Hollywood, or will it just end up bankrupting Hollywood sooner and send everything to streaming? But the filmmaking achievement of Top Gun Maverick is undeniable. So that's why I would put it on my preferential ballot at number one. So to run down my preferential ballot again, I have Top Gun Maverick 1, Everything Everywhere All at Once 2, The Fabelmans 3, Tar 4, Banshees of Inisherin 5, 6 is Women Talking, 7 is Elvis, 8 is Avatar The Way of Water, 9 is All Quiet on the Western Front, and 10 is Triangle of Sadness. So let's just take that for a second. You know, films that have a higher one, like, let's look at the titles that are probably going to be divisive on this thing. Elvis is undoubtedly a little divisive. Banshees of Inisherin, that ending is going to be divisive. Tar, there is going to be some Academy members who do not feel comfortable about accountability in their actions within it. There's going to be some who have it lower. Everything Everywhere All at Once will not play to older voters. So this could have a lot of 1 votes. I'd also have to guess Everything Everywhere All at Once will also have its 10 votes. So that's where we're talking, like, the idea that this film, Everything Everywhere All at Once, is going to run away with it, in reality, it probably is because it has won all the precursors. But while looking at it, that's where I think pundits like me who look at it and are just like, there is a section of the Academy which is made up of 10,000 people. Now, I know they've added approximately 1,000 to 2,000 of those people have been significantly younger within the past 10 years. So that is definitely boosting a film like Everything Everywhere All at Once to have greater success within the Academy. But the critique of this was the Academy was always old and white, and they're not going to go for a film like Everything Everywhere All at Once. And that's what makes this year's Oscars so interesting. If they embrace a film like Everything Everywhere All at Once, this really would signify a greater changing movement within the Academy and imply that the youngness of the Academy is really starting to take light and hold within the Academy, and we can see a lot more exciting things to come from it. And that's where I think this Academy Awards is going to be very interesting. The worst thing that could happen for this Academy Awards is if a film like All Quiet on the Western Front wins, because it really does solidify everything we thought about Hollywood and thought about the Academy. So that's why this race is really interesting, and that's why I will be live streaming the Academy Awards here on this channel tomorrow. So if you're at all interested, make sure to subscribe to the Beniverse. Check out my live stream. We will be going live with the Oscars, and I will be giving my commentary throughout. And I have a special surprise coming throughout this week. Anyway, guys, thank you for watching. My name is Ben Friedman, here from the Beniverse. If you like this video, make sure to like and subscribe. Take care, guys, and bye-bye.